Psalms 35, verses 19 to 25. Do not let those that are my enemies wrongfully rejoice over me, neither let them wink with the eye that hate me without a cause. For they don't speak peacefully, but they devise deceitful matters against them that are quiet in the land. Yes, they open their mouth wide against me and say, Aha, aha, all eyes have seen it. This you have seen, O Lord, so don't keep silence. O Lord, do not be far from me. Stir up yourself, and awake to my judgment, even unto my cause, my Lord and my God. This will directly relate to that. Zack Snyder's family criticizes Warner Brothers for meddling with the Justice League. They don't sound too happy. Now, this is not really his family, but it's his son, Jett Snyder, who also worked on the project with him. And Jett Snyder had some words to say, and Zack Snyder actually liked the post that he made, as well as Clay Enos and executive producer Wesley Collar. Fabian Wagner, he spoke a little bit about what he thought about the movie, and he said, "This one is even shorter than I expected, so there are scenes that aren't in there. I really hope we get a director's cut, which will give us everything we shot, which didn't make it in." And just so you guys know, Jett Snyder, he said, "On a more serious note, I did enjoy the movie, although it is clearly not what it could have been due to the meddling of Warner Brothers and the forced comedy. The runtime was my biggest gripe with the movie, with events that should take a long time over in a flash. Dollar signs. But still, definitely a fun movie to watch and would recommend it." So that's what Jett Snyder had to say. He actually worked on the film with Zack Snyder, and you can see him sometimes in some of the behind-the-scene footage. Now, that's his opinion, and I mean, he's entitled to it, and he really would have a lot of clout because he actually worked on the movie. So he knows what was in there, what was not in there. He talks about forced comedy, and I think he's mostly referring to the Wonder Woman moment with the Flash falling on top of her. I think a lot of people had advised Joss Whedon not to do that scene, and he still went ahead and did it. And they kept it in, Warner Bros. Kept it in because it always evoked laughter from the audience. So I get what he means by forced comedy. All right. And I actually, in replying to one of the people who visit this channel, I showed him how much scenes actually Zack Snyder did, which were humorous, and how many scenes Joss Whedon did. And Zack Snyder has a ton more humorous scenes than Joss Whedon does. So I don't think he's talking about the mood of the film being campy or having comedy forced in. I think he's talking about specific moments in the film which he thinks is forced comedy. And I must say, some of the comedy that Joss Whedon actually did in this film, and he really didn't do a whole lot in this film, like I said, even in terms of comedy, he didn't do a lot of that in this film. But for the most part, Joss Whedon had a mixed bag. Zack Snyder had a mixed bag of comical moments, okay, that worked and didn't work. When I was doing my count, I reached up to 18 comical moments that Zack Snyder did with certain characters, primarily the Flash, and Joss Whedon had, I think, 10. Okay, so all in all, I don't think, and this movie was not a comedy, and Henry Cavill said that, Charles Roven said that, okay, it's sprinkled with comedy throughout, even less comedy than Wonder Woman had, completely less comedy than Suicide Squad had, and Suicide Squad didn't have that much comical moments. So, but it's rewatchable comedy. What I mean by that is, I've gone to the cinema and time again people laugh at the joke with the Flash. Everybody's seen it in the trailers. Everybody has, some people went to the cinema multiple times and seen that joke with the Flash. The first one where he says, "Stop right there, I'm in." It cracks everybody up every single time. It doesn't matter how many. And the other one is, "It's cool that you guys are ready to do battle, but I never done battle. I just push people and run away." That makes people crack up. And there's a couple others. No matter what, that joke is like almost eternal. It's like it works. Both of those jokes, by the way, are Zack Snyder jokes. They're not Joss Whedon jokes. All right, so that's why I said Zack Snyder did a lot of. He tried to make the movie a lot lighter. And I remember the first time they showed the sneak peek in Comic-Con, the very first one, where the Flash was stop right there, I'm in. And that was Zack Snyder, okay? May have been assisted by Joss Whedon in getting it refined, but that's Zack Snyder joke. And like I said, if you haven't watched Owls of Gahul, which is wacky and hilarious in certain parts, then you really don't know that Zack Snyder can do humor, okay? Now, the other thing was that he spoke about the meddling of Warner Brothers. In this case, I really can't agree with him on that, but I do understand what he means. Jeff Johns, Warner Brothers, Joss Whedon, all these guys were trying to get it much more lighter. And they would keep on saying it needs to be more lighter. And Warner Brothers has a history of doing this. The first two Batman films, which are still the best Batman films out there in terms of pure Batman film, not talking about films where Batman is in it. Quite frankly, Ben Affleck is the best Batman I've ever seen in live action. And I'll explain to you why. I'll do a video. There's a video coming out that was blocked on YouTube, but I will get it to you guys. Trust me, I'll get it to you guys so you can see the value in what I'm talking about. But Warner Bros. Has a history of doing this. They screw up all the time. So they have a history with the first two Batmans. They said Tim Burton was just way too dark and it wouldn't be enough for kids. And Warner Brothers really wants to do this. They want to make a movie that the families can go see and they can make more money selling toys. You see? They want to be able to use their brand and sell toys to kids. So they're trying to get at kids and they're trying to make money. And these executives, they don't care, like I said before, about these movies. They're not invested in them. They're not comic book fans. So they don't care. Okay? But on Warner Brothers' side of the coin, while I know that Jeff Johns and Warner Brothers and Joss Whedon, it seemed as though they were pressing for a much more soft-core version of Zack Snyder's hardcore movies. You can tell they're trying to tone down certain things. And then Warner Brothers' mandate, which I can't fault them now because Zack Snyder should have fought that, to have the film cut down to 2 hours. Now, the last time with BVS, what they did to Zack, which was wrong, was on the last minute, just a couple weeks before Zack Snyder could put the movie out, they gave him a mandate to keep it down to under 3 hours, to 2 hours and something. That was evil, okay? And again, if you let these executives run amok, they'll do whatever the heck they want to do. Patty Jenkins had to fight for that No Man's Land scene, so I get that. But they didn't do Zack Snyder wrong this time because Zack Snyder apparently agreed to the 2 hour limit way before he left Warner Brothers. At least allegedly this is what is being assumed. Zack Snyder never speaks on any of these things. We don't know really what's happening. It could be a rumor. So which means he knew that he needed to make a 2 hour long movie. And so he would have to have designed this thing to suit that. And Joss Whedon, obviously, when he came on board, it seemed as though Zack Snyder was trying to trim down the movie to 2 hours. That was what he was trying to do in post-edits. And he realized it was very difficult. And also he had the family tragedy, so he had to leave the scene, which left Joss Whedon to do all of that. Plus, Joss Whedon had to make sure and sew it up properly. So what I think Joss Whedon was doing was he was trimming down the movie and trying to knit together scenes after he cut out so much of the movie. And that's why he was doing the reshoots. That's what I think principally happened. And that Zack couldn't do that. He couldn't do it. Like he kind of was forced into saying, okay, I'll make a 2 hour long movie. But he knew he couldn't make it. He knew he couldn't reach that limit. It would have been hacked to shreds. And Joss Whedon did a very good job of keeping the bare bones of the movie together. And therefore, an enjoyable bare bones of the movie. He made the movie enjoyable. Some of Zack Snyder's humor is kind of disjointed. And I could see that Joss Whedon came in and kind of nipped together the humor. So it actually flows. The whole movie flows from beginning to end. You look at Zack Snyder's, even the Aquaman scene when Aquaman comes up from underground. And he says, and he laughs and he says, just like a bat. I dig it. Before that, he didn't. Joss Whedon seemed to have sewed it together and put some context to it in the earlier scenes where they were in Iceland. But I'm not saying he reshot anything there particularly, but I think he kind of knit together what Zack Snyder was doing so he could get a better flowing storyline. Because Zack is so detailed. One thing I noticed about Zack Snyder, if he can't make a long movie, he has problems making short movies. He did it for Man of Steel. He did relatively successfully for Man of Steel. But generally speaking, Zack likes to have his lore and his mythos behind it and moving forward. Joss Whedon was able to kind of succinctly capture all of that in 2 hours, which is remarkable. Okay, it's not a nonsensical film. It actually flows, and it's actually entertaining. That's incredible. Kudos to Joss Whedon on that. And again, Joss Whedon, I don't think he did a lot of directing. I think most of his directing was just to knit together scenes. It wasn't about jokes, as people think, and levity, but connecting the movie so it flowed better. So that's what I think Joss Whedon was doing. Do I think that Joss Whedon made certain moments superfluous or superficial? Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you there. And he even kind of made some of the ending of the movie much more straightforward. So it was just like very straightforward. But I'm sure there was much more depth to Steppenwolf, even though not that much more. Even after you get all the backstory, it's not going to be that much more. I also think there's a lot more backstory for Aquaman, Cyborg, and even the Flash has a little bit more backstory. I would think so, because it's a 3-hour-long cut with Zack Snyder had, a rough draft. So I would expect that. But what I'm saying is that I don't think it takes anything away from the story and the point behind the story, which is why I know Jett Snyder or Jett Elin, he would say that because he was working on the movie and he had every single detail. He can't see the big picture. He's not a director. He's not a director. You know, he's just working on the movie. So I understand how he feels. And even where he may have had dissent with how Joss Whedon went about doing certain things, I can understand that as well. That's when you're making a movie, you're going to disagree with other people, and there's going to be all of this stuff going on, especially where you were working along with Zack Snyder. A lot of people were working along with Zack Snyder, and now Joss Whedon comes in with a different style and a different way of doing things. But I also looked at the more serious moments in the movie where Joss Whedon we clearly know Joss Whedon was a part of that. One of them was when Superman rose from the dead and he was speaking to Batman and he was speaking to Wonder Woman. It was an extremely piercing, serious moment that only the CGI kind of dampens, you know, where Superman says, he asks Batman, why did you raise me back up? And he said, well, the world needs you. He says, you won't let me die, you won't let me live. And he looks him straight in the face and with tremendous intensity and says, do you bleed? That is intense, man. And that's a Joss Whedon. Now, I'm not saying that he veered completely away from the script, but the point is, it's Joss Whedon did those serious moments. And we know that's a Joss Whedon moment because we see the CGI for Superman's lip, right? His mouth. And there are a couple other very serious moments. Diana speaking with Bruce inside of the room as she's going to help Bruce with his arm. Because Bruce is badly banged up. He's a badly injured guy. And he's old. And Diana's speaking with him. And there are particular moments which have to do with Steve Trevor, where I think Joss Whedon had rewrote those moments. And why I say Steve Trevor, I don't think was initially in the earlier cuts. And I think Zack Snyder was just speaking on general terms when he told her, you know, I never heard of you, and so on, you know. And even when he says, did Steve Trevor tell you that? That obviously is a Joss Whedon put that in. He added that to the cut after Wonder Woman. But my point anyway is this. That Joss Whedon actually was working more, it seems, on the more serious moments of the film. We know that even when Superman returns, there's a lot more stuff cut out of the film. I mean, we can tell that. We saw a tank flying through the air. We saw a number of different things were kind of remodeled a little bit. But essentially, where the team faces off against Superman, essentially that's intact. Just that Superman took a little longer to come to his senses, all right? And Lois Lane was able to get him out of there. So it was a little bit more higher stakes. And I think Joss Whedon also added in one or two elements in there that wasn't there before. But my point anyway is this. That it doesn't take away from the Zack Snyder story. This is a Zack Snyder story. Listen, man, like I said before, and I gave evidence for it from Charles Roven's statements, from Ben Affleck's statements, that you're talking about between 80 to 90% of this film is Zack Snyder stuff. All right? That's shot footage. Okay? Joss Whedon just did little touch-ups here and there. He cut out a lot from the movie, but essentially he did not interfere with Zack's vision of this movie. Not at all. All right? And so some of the things going on out there are rumors. And I keep on saying this over and over to you guys because I maintain what I say. And the fact that this guy says he would recommend the movie, Jett Snyder. If you would recommend a movie, then you're just being critical. You're just being pet critical because you've been working on the movie. But if you're being honest, if Jett Snyder is being honest, this movie should not be abandoned by those people who say they're Zack Snyder fans and be spoken about so negatively. No matter what in-house stuff was going on with this movie. Okay? I'm sure in-house stuff was going on with Rogue One. Okay? People got fired from the job, for crying out loud. Rogue One, the only difference is the guy who had to do Rogue One, he got to do his own vision, 80% of the movie. Okay? The guy who redid Rogue One. The opposite of what happened with Whedon and Snyder. Okay? So you would see more of his movie. But the other guy who contributed, you would see his earlier parts of the movie. So again, I think people are getting carried away with the in-house stuff. What happened between Zack Snyder and Warner Brothers, while I feel like that is something worth us fans knowing about, so that Warner Brothers knows they shouldn't go this road. And I want, again, a strong message to Warner Brothers. Even if the fans feel a hint that you are betraying their directors and you're mistreating their directors, if the fans sense that, they're going to come at you. Okay? And they don't care because you're just trying to make a buck. You don't really care about nobody. The executives, most executives on Warner Bros. Don't care about anyone. Okay? They just care about turning a buck. So, really, it's up to the fans to make a demand as to what they want. Now, I am really happy that the fans are asking for Zack Snyder's cut of the movie. I'm not, but what I'm angry about is the fans bashing Joss Whedon. And I will defend Joss Whedon to the end. And I'll also defend WB to the end in the sense that you don't scapegoat these people. Alright? Zack Snyder's movie, as Jett Snyder says, is he would recommend it. Now the thing that I find hypocritical is where he's talking about Warner Brothers meddling and they forcing comedy, but yet he would recommend this movie. That's the thing I don't get. If you're going to recommend a movie, recommend it. If you're going to abandon it, abandon it. Alright? But don't be saying, I would recommend this movie, and then in tongue-in-cheek in the other way, you're trying to bash people for it. That's the thing that annoys the crap out of me. Because the comedy, and some of Zack Snyder's comedy was forced. Some of the comedy in this movie, most of the comedy in this movie is Zack Snyder's comedy. So either you're playing partisan, or you're really trying to take shots at people. Okay? Joss Whedon's moment with The Flash, where The Flash actually paints the guy's face. Okay? That's a Joss Whedon moment. But no, that's not necessarily the Joss Whedon moment. That might be a Zack Snyder moment. But the Joss Whedon moment is when the guy, the officer who is, he's taking a note that the Flash, or at least Barry Allen, is going to see his father, and he's notifying Bruce Wayne. He makes a statement to the guy with the glasses. He says, "You're trying to be smart?" You know? And it's very, very funny. And I believe that's a Joss Whedon moment because the guy who is actually the prison officer there, he wasn't initially the prison officer. He was a policeman in Metropolis when the tank was falling on him. So obviously that's a reshoot. And therefore that's a Joss Whedon moment. So if you're going to really bash Joss Whedon, then you got to acknowledge when he is put together for his humor. Then you got to acknowledge when he puts together good humor. Bad humor that Joss Whedon did was the Flash being on top of Wonder Woman. There was another scene where he says, "Gross," after he runs through the parademons, which I thought was just cheesy as hell. And I think that's a Joss Whedon additional moment. It could be Zack Snyder, but I doubt it highly. I think that's a Joss Whedon. That little piece there is reshot. So all of the rest of the stuff was Zack Snyder, and then that little part. Also, the color palette is Joss Whedon. Color palette is Joss Whedon. It seems as though Junkie XL would have had a much more epic track than Danny Elfman. We know this because I heard the Man of Steel theme in the sneak peek, and man, that was crazy. And then it would have been a little bit more suspenseful. It would have been a little bit more edgy and more horrific, which would have been awesome. But at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is. This is what it is. It feels like Justice League, and that's all that really matters. And the most of the movie was about the Justice League. I'd say 80% of the movie was focused on the Justice League. About maybe 5% was on Steppenwolf, if you paid attention. And the rest was about the rest of the world, right? So, really, all in all, you're talking about, actually it's more. I think it's about, maybe it's about 15% was Steppenwolf, and then 5% was the rest of the world. So this movie basically was about the Justice League, which is what's supposed to be about. So I don't have any qualms about it, you know. Even the Joss Whedon moment with the lasso of truth with Aquaman, which definitely had to be a Joss Whedon moment. He kind of dumbed it down a little bit. But once again, it's okay, because Zack Snyder probably would have carried it even more extreme than Joss Whedon did. From what I hear from Ezra Miller, Joss Whedon toned down what Zack Snyder would have gone to the extreme degree with some stuff. So it's all good, you know. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, because a lot of people say, oh, well, Jet Ellen, you know, or Jett Snyder, he was, you know, he said that this, you know, Warner Brothers meddled and some of the comedy was forced. I mean, some of the comedy was forced. And it's not just Whedon's comedy that was forced. I'll give you one where the comedy was forced. When the Flash was talking about, man, I you know, I was telling you about the Speed Force, and, you know, I got this black hole, you know, where I just got to keep on eating. My metabolism's high. A black hole, you know, like a snack hole. And he really emphasizes on it. And it sounds very cheesy. And it kind of falls on deaf ears for most part. Most people didn't laugh at it. That was a Zack Snyder moment. Straight up. You can just go behind the scenes footage and see him talking to Batman. This is a Zack Snyder moment. Now, the cool moment with the car, where the car drives off, you know, and you see Central City. Yeah, we missed that. That was cut from the movie for time. So I'm sure that no matter what, the DVD Blu-ray cut is going to have either those deleted scenes, or it's going to have a little bit more, maybe an extended cut, or they may even have a director's cut for this. But it's just more money for Warner Brothers. You guys got to see, you're playing into their hands anyway how you take it. They're going to make money one way or the other. And that pisses me off a little bit. But at the same time, I can't say that this movie was a travesty to Zack Snyder's vision. It's definitely Zack Snyder, almost all the way through this movie. It's a Zack Snyder movie. So Warner Bros. Really tried to walk that fine line. Joss Whedon worked his ass off to try and make it happen, which is probably why he didn't have any interviews. He didn't have time, because he had to cut down the film to 2 hours and make it work. And he did a phenomenal job when it comes to that. I don't think Zack could have pulled that off as well as Joss Whedon did. 2-hour cut? No. He couldn't do it for BVS. I mean, he was pressed for time. I mean, it was a couple of weeks he had to do that. But with this one actually flows better than BVS in many respects. So I would have to say it's much more streamlined, much more simple story. So I just have to say that Joss Whedon did a hell of a job with cutting it down. Danny Elfman's score is fantastic for what Danny Elfman does. I really would have liked to hear more of Junkie XL stuff in it. So I'm sure when you see the cut with, if it is a Zack Snyder cut ever coming out or something like that, we could actually hear Junkie XL's take on it. I think the movie would be a little bit more grittier. I think it would be a little bit more darker. I think it would be a little bit more realistic. But at the end of the day, I think that the Justice League we got is fantastic, solid. Anytime you hear me say a film is solid, that's good. I never said it was a masterpiece, and I never will say that this film here is a masterpiece. Do I think it was a better? It's better. It'll go down better with audiences than BVS did. Absolutely, I think it will. I think it's rewatchable, and BVS is a hell of a theatrical cut, or ultimate cut is hella rewatchable. You know what I'm saying? But this movie is definitely rewatchable. The characters are really, really, really the thing that you go back to see every single time. And there's certain moments in the film that will get you every single time. There's some shocking moments in this film. There's some funny moments in this film. There's some tragic moments in this film. There's some dramatic moments in this film. You know, there's some... The thing about this film, I think, that's a little bit different to, say, BVS, was the hope is a little bit different. You know, Superman laid down his life at the end of BVS, and it was sad until that's the very final second of the film. There's that inkling of hope that makes you all optimistic at the end. So you leave the film really deeply cut, but you still at the same time feel that glimmer of hope. In this film, at the end of this film, you feel super powered hopeful because of Superman. Superman makes this film so hopeful. So I mean, you're going to love this movie, and you will want to see it a lot of times just to the fact that Superman returns in this film. And how he returns is really, I think, really awesome because just the way how there's this uncertainty in his return is just cool. You know, the whole audience is quiet. You can hear a pin drop when Superman touches down on the steps of Metropolis. It's really crazy. I mean, because people don't know if he's good or bad, and that's just exactly what Zack Snyder was going for, and Joss Whedon was able to compress it into a small format to get your emotions to feel that way. So I gotta say, man, I don't know what people are saying about this movie, and you know, Zack Snyder's vision was hacked to death. Hell no. That's again, like I said before, in my opinion, I hold fast to it. That is fake outrage. That is fake outrage, and I'm a realist. And as much as Jett Snyder says, and he is entitled to his opinion, you know, he tries to blame Warner Bros. For meddling. I don't think that they meddled in this movie as much as he claims, and I don't think that. Well, I do believe that there was forced comedy in this movie, but I generally don't laugh to general slapstick comedy, Hollywood humor. Let me give you an example of Joss Whedon with the Hollywood humor. There's some Hollywood humor and some Hollywood lines inside of this movie, and you could tell that it's Joss Whedon because he goes the Hollywood route, where you know, you can tell a Whedon moment sometimes, and you know, this joke with the hippo, and you know, no, you shouldn't tell him about the hippo, which is typical Hollywood, where you know they assume that a child would tell you, they would pick some kind of out there joke, and it was nice though. It reminded me of Elmo from Sesame Street. It was kind of out there, kind of childish joke, which a child would make. But at the end of the day, you know, you could tell that was a Whedon moment. But at the same time, Superman maintained his poise. The character was enshrined, and that's what Ben Affleck was saying. Once you set the characters, there's very little the other director can do to operate outside of it. You know, when Batman says. When Aquaman accuses him of being out of his mind, and Batman says, "I'm not the one carrying the pitchfork," right? It possibly is Whedon. It could be, but it could have been Zack Snyder, even though it may or may not have been Zack Snyder in that cut. But the thing about it is this: the thing is, it is a punchline joke in a way. Batman's dead serious about it, though. He's not joking. But it's a punchline joke. It's a bit cheesy and it's a bit cliche, somewhat. But yet Batman is kind of dark. So the pitchfork line sounds fair enough. But at the end of the day, the question is this. How many of you, after watching this movie, enjoyed it? And if you enjoyed this movie, and you'd recommend it to another person, who cares what production woes were in it? You can lobby for a Zack Snyder cut, but if the movie's good, now you can't be vexed at Warner Bros. You can't be angry at Warner Bros. And they slashed Zack Snyder's vision. How they slash Zack Snyder's vision and the movie's good and you would recommend it? If they slash Zack Snyder's vision, then it won't be good and you wouldn't recommend it. That's the thing that gets me, man. So you either take a stance that the movie was a pack of shit or the movie was good. I think it's a damn good movie. Okay? I think it's a damn good movie. I don't care about the internal fightings. And obviously Jett, he would be strong on how he feels because he would feel that Joss Whedon needs to do everything he recommends, or the people working with Joss Whedon need to do everything that they recommend. Okay? And it's understandable. Right? Now people are trying to destroy Joss Whedon's career and attack the dude. You think about it now. Joss Whedon was working with Marvel. He had to move across from Marvel. No working with Marvel no more. Now here he is trying to work for Warner Brothers. He does everything he possibly could. The movie actually comes off to be a good movie. All right? Whether you guys believe that the Batman scenes, he was trying to put comedy into the Batman scenes at the beginning of the movie or not, it didn't end up in the final draft of the movie. Right? So the point is, if he has so much clout like he claims he has, you claim he has, and he got Danny Elfman on there, and he's able to put in certain scenes in the movie, which we clearly know are Joss Whedon scenes now because it's been discussed, then what's to stop him from having the beginning of the movie with Batman be that way? So I don't believe those rumors. I don't believe them. He's the director of the film and he can't get what he wants inside of the film? I don't believe that. The other thing is, he'd have to be a jackass to try to reshoot that opening scene because it's already shot. So how you gonna go? If you look at what Joss Whedon was doing in this movie, he's trying to put the connective tissue together because he cut out certain parts of the movie to get the runtime. And if Jett's main criticism, his main problem with the movie, he said runtime was my biggest gripe with the movie. His main gripe with this movie it's just a nitpick really, is that I didn't get enough. I didn't get enough of this movie because we worked real hard in the background. I just didn't get enough. That's a compliment. That means the movie was that good that you wanted more from it. I'm just saying. Most of the people who are talking about this movie being shaft is because they wanted more from it. That's all. That's all. It was good. I just wish I could get more of it. If you leave a movie thinking that the movie did its job. So, at the end of the day, we know there are just Joss Whedon haters out there. It is what it is. We have Zack Snyder haters and we have Joss Whedon haters. And it's just so funny that the hypocrisy of people. Here you are, right, defending Zack Snyder and all his movies. Joss Whedon comes across a director who you feel is campy all the time and he only can do campy movies and he only got a lot of jokes. And you don't like Marvel because of their jokes. So you immediately don't like Joss Whedon because he's some kind of, Marvel mole and he's coming in to destroy, the DCEU. And that's the rhetoric going around. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous rhetoric. When I first heard that Joss Whedon was going to direct Justice League, I wasn't particularly happy either. But I knew that you have to open your mind to things. I didn't know Joss Whedon as a director. I then went on to look at what was happening with Justice League, and I suspected then they were talking about extensive reshoots and stuff. And that's what the media lies. Extensive reshoots my ass. Right? Anyway, they were talking about how he did 35% and 40% reshoots and he got writer's credit, which means you got to have at least 20 to 30% and all kinds of bullshit. But the truth be told, Joss Whedon didn't do that much on this movie. The ending has been streamlined, has been cut down. It was longer. Certain parts of the movie were longer. Joss Whedon just got to the point with it. And then he sewed the missing pieces together. Didn't do a perfect job because at the end Batman says, she is calm. And I'm like, who the hell is she? He forgot. Simply cut out bits and pieces of Hegra in the storyline. And he forgot to tie up that loose end. So, I'm just saying, the score also affected this movie. Okay? But it caused the general audiences to like it because it's not a prominent feature of the movie. And because it doesn't shoot that narrative that this is a dark movie, it lightens up the movie even in darker moments. People tend to like this movie even if you're a Zack Snyder fan. I personally would have loved to hear the Man of Steel theme, and I did like when Junkie XL had that sort of suspenseful music in there, me personally. But I am cool with what Joss Whedon did because he kept certain degrees of suspense. Yes, I heard the Avengers theme pop up and disappear a couple times in the movie, and I wanted to roll my eyes, but I said, let me give it a second chance. Okay? He didn't stay on it very long. It will come up and then disappear. That's part of his composition. So, you know what? I give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, you compose all that stuff. It will pop up every now and then. Alright? So, I'm not mad at what Joss Whedon and Danny Elfman did with this movie. In fact, I thought Danny Elfman did, again, a masterful job of incorporating all these different feels and even some of Junkie XL's suspenseful stuff in there. And even some stuff, as somebody was pointing out, from The Matrix, which I thought was pretty cool as well. Alright? The soundtrack was not featured in this movie. It was not meant to be a feature. However, I gotta say, man, that beginning with Everybody Knows kills you, man. Every time I see the movie, I cry. I break down. Tear comes out of my eye, man. You know, so deep emotively, and it's coming from that place after BVS. I thought it was just awesome how they transitioned there, and I thought the movie served its purpose in kind of not only lightening up the film, but giving the light of day as hope is starting to increase and increase and is gathering momentum. And by the end of the film, I thought it was very hopeful, and it felt like the Justice League comics, which was Zack Snyder was pushing for anyway. He was pushing for Justice League 2001. So I'm not sure why this fake outrage, because to me, I go deeply into films. I thought this film served its purpose. I knew there were two different directors working on this film, so you couldn't get a purely Zack Snyder-esque Zack Snyder project from beginning to end. You wasn't going to get that. But I thought Joss Whedon minimally impacted his Joss Whedonness on this film, and it really didn't take away from the Zack Snyder storyline, the Zack Snyder plot, the Zack Snyder way of doing things. And so I was not mad at this film at all. But just check out my next video that's coming up. Alright, guys? So I want to leave you with that. It's another long video. I like to talk sometimes long. You guys have a great one.